It's time to talk with Jay Foss.
Thanks so much for calling in. I really appreciate you.
You're welcome. I appreciate you too, Jay Foss.
The magic happens when you have the right person in the right place at the right time.
If we're having fun, everyone else is going to have fun naturally.
Keep it local radio.
I'm obsessed with transformations on this show. And so I guess that in this case, you are that paradigm shift. You are the thing that transforms people. That's what people call me.
Want to connect with Jay? Dial in.
But then the question is everyone tuned into the right frequency?
Are you tuned in?
Making our corner of the world a little brighter.
Did you make the right decision here? Like, are you, did you bite off more than you can chew?
In figuring out what makes people tick whenever we start something new.
Yeah.
There's always that question of
raising your inner voice.
Wait, was this too much? Did I start hiking a mountain that's a little too high for my level of experience?
With Jay Foss.
It's a quote by Thoreau. The price of anything is the amount of life you exchange for it.
Not just another talk show.
We cover all things that make us human.
It's time to be heard.
How can my values and how can these inner thoughts that I have help me be a more whole human being?
Online and on air.
We can't legislate being a good, decent human being. So what can we do? We can become more active in this community.
Raising your inner voice with Jay Foss.
Hey, party people. Thanks so much for tuning back in once again. This is Raising Your Inner Voice, where we delve into kind of various deep dives, doing deep dives on what makes different people tick. And I love having guests on the show. My guest today is Mr. Dr. Ricky Volpe. He's the professor of agribusiness at CalPoly. And Ricky, let's dive right into this. Agribusiness. Explain to me more what agribusiness is.
Right. That's a great question. Agribusiness. It's the title of the name of the department is something that we are actually continually wrestling with.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. So I'm our program, our campus is in San Luis Obispo, California, which is sort of nestled in specialty crop country. So when you think about a lot of the fruits and vegetables and tree nuts that you consume, here and all around the U.S., a huge share of them are grown within 100 miles of where our campus is. And I'm bringing this up because between our physical location near all of this ag production and the name of our department, we are commonly associated with agricultural production, so farming. Some folks, see my business card and they think I'm literally a professor of farming. We have programs on that. We have classes on that. That's not what I do. And in fact, you might be surprised at the limits of my knowledge if we happen to be driving up and down I-5 in California and ask me, what is that crop over there? I'm probably going to guess alfalfa. I don't know for sure. But that's so I guess the answer to your question is, what is agribusiness? I like to call it food economics. So our program is sort of centered on teaching undergrads. We're undergrads only. Our program, agribusiness, is all undergrads, and it's dedicated to undergrad education on the economic and business concepts related to getting food from the farm to your kitchen table. And we're meant to cover the whole thing holistically, and I was brought on board for that end piece, that sort of consumer-facing retail, wholesale, logistics, distribution.
Why did you delve in? Why is your life involved around agribusiness?
That is a great question, and it's a one-word answer. Walmart. Have you heard of them?
Oh, of course.
Yeah, so Walmart.
Have I heard of them?
We have Walmarts around here, right? In the North Shore, yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
So Walmart, love them or hate them, you can't argue that Walmart transformed grocery in a way that few industries have ever bbeen transformed. So, so Walmart changed the game. And if we're not careful, I could spend the whole hour talking about Walmart. Because it is, you laugh, but it is.
I do.
I have, I teach, my favorite class to teach is food retail management. It's an upper level elective, but it's very popular, and I absolutely love teaching it. And I get to talk about these things that I find interesting. And I've got a lot of alumni who I'm still friends with and in touch with, and they kind of refer to me jokingly, I think lovingly, as sort of the Walmart guy or Professor Walmart. And it's because I do talk about them a lot because of how they have changed the game, how they transformed how groceries get on the supermarket shelves, how they're priced, how they're stored, how food waste is dealt with, reverse logistics. And my connection to Walmart goes back over 20 years now. I was a master's student at UMass Amherst, just a couple hours west of here, and I got involved on a grant to study the impact of Walmart supercenters on grocery prices at other supermarkets. So so the idea is, we all know Walmart's cheap, right? Walmart's one of the cheapest places to buy groceries. But if Walmart comes to town, now they're competing directly with, Stop and Shop, Market Basket, Big Y, Hannaford's, all these chains. So the question, at least 20-something years ago, was, well, how do they respond? How do these traditional brick and mortar supermarkets respond to Walmart? And I got involved in a research project, found some interesting results, fell in love with it, and I had an advisor who, she also was just beginning her academic career at the time, and she was very supportive of my interests, and she basically said to me, if you're enjoying this, you could do this for a career. And I was hooked. Usually, I said, you're telling me I can play around with data and sort of generate these insights and just spend a career talking about this kind of stuff? Here we are, 20-something years later, I'm still at it.
Wow. Yeah. Nice.
Thank you.
Well, and I wanted to bring you on the show. We've had on restaurant owners before, people in the food industry. Food, it's something that we all consume, right?
That's right.
Are most people, I would assume most people are not as interested in this topic as you are, clearly.
Yes and no. I think you're absolutely right in that most people don't spend a whole lot of time thinking about the food that they eat, the food that they buy at the supermarket, or the food that they get at the restaurant, thinking about, well, sort of like, where did it come from and what happened to it before they were able to see it and see a price tag on it. So in that sense, I do think I have some interests that are, maybe bordering on esoteric. But that said, I am an economist. I'm trained as an economist, and I've been to a lot of talks given by economists, and I have really, really good friends who work on, you name it, tax law and, international trade and airlines and it's all worthwhile stuff. It's all interesting, but people relate to food in a way that they don't necessarily relate to a lot of these other topics. And what that means is that when I give talks to academic audiences, to general audiences, to industrial audiences, people really engage, and I have fun conversations. Sometimes we have disagreements, but I enjoy those too. And because everybody, like you said, everybody buys food. Everybody has preferences about food and thoughts about food and understands roughly how much they spend on food and where they go to get it. And that generates these conversations, because sometimes I'm talking about an insight I've had where it clicks with people and they go, oh my God, that's exactly right. Or sometimes they say, I'd never thought of that. Or sometimes they say, that can't be right. Yeah. Either way, it makes for fun conversations that you might not see if you're, dealing with a professor who's talking about the pharmaceutical industry, as an example.
Right. What are some good insights you've had lately regarding the food economy?
Oh boy. Boy, don't get me going. I would say, so, I am, okay, I'll give you two examples. One is, I'm just a big fan of private labels. You know what private labels are? Like when I say private label, what do you think of?
I don't even know.
Yeah, see, I'm putting you on the spot. Where do you go grocery shopping?
Typically, we have a local market, Crosby's down the street.
Crosby's. They must be independent, right?
Yeah.
But what about, you ever been to like a Stop and Shop,
of course.
Market Basket?
Yeah, I've been to all of the above.
Oh, yeah. So when
have I ever been there?
Well, okay. So when you go into basically any supermarket, depending on how small Crosby's is, they could be an exception.
They're pretty small.
But when you go into any sort of full-size traditional supermarket, they have
Trader Joe's, Market Basket.
Well, you said Trader Joe's. Let's start there.
Okay.
Let's start there.
Yeah.
Trader Joe's is all private label. They're what we call a limited assortment supermarket, because they effectively only have one brand, and the brand is Trader Joe's. Sometimes it's Trader Jose's or whatever, but that is their own brand, which is marketed as being unique to their chain. Yeah. Now, if we could talk about whether that's true or not, but that's how it's marketed, right? And technically speaking, you can only buy Trader Joe's tortilla chips at Trader Joe's.
Right.
Okay. So almost everybody plays that game. They may not play it as well as Trader Joe's, or as another example, Aldi. Are you familiar with Aldi? Do we have?
Slightly, yeah.
I don't know if Aldi is necessarily out here, but
They are.
Okay,
They are.
Aldi is the cheaper, less fun version of Trader Joe's.
Yeah.
But same game, right?
Right.
It's private label, limited assortment. So I think private labels are fascinating because they, in the last 20, 30 years, have really changed the game in food retail. They've changed the way that stores are laid out and, product assortment and what goes at eye level and pricing because they're a double whammy for consumers and retailers. They're cheaper than national brands, right? But the profit margins are higher. So they're kind of a win-win, right? For the shopper and for the grocer. And that's why they're gaining so much steam. And the US is gradually drifting towards the model over in the EU and the UK where private labels are actually dominant. If you've ever gone if you've ever gone to like a Sainsbury or a Tesco or anything like that in Western Europe, over there it's almost all store brands. And the sort of Heinz, Kellogg, General Mills, they're on the fringe. It's the opposite of what we have here. Yeah. And we're trending in that direction in the US, and I view that as a good thing, largely because, and people don't think about this a lot, private labels are, in their own way, improving food security in the U.S. because they're cheaper, they're more affordable, And so when people ask, especially when we had the brutal post-COVID food price inflation of 22 and 23, I would give talks or give interviews where people would say, what's your advice for how to save money? And that's the first thing I would say is a lot of people in the U.S. don't consider private labels because we still, when you and I were kids, they were lumped in with generics, right? They were lower quality, they were bottom shelf, they were in bags, right? They were that is completely different now. But what hasn't changed is they're affordable. They're maybe 25, 30% cheaper than national brands. So I think about them a lot and I talk about them a lot, and I'm very interested in where they come from and how they are differentiated from national brands. And that's something that's very, very interesting that's going on in grocery right now.
For anyone just tuning in, this is Raising Your Inner Voice. My guest this evening is Dr. Ricky Volpe. He's a professor of agribusiness at CalPoly, and we're talking right now about private labels. Something that comes to mind, we're deep diving in case you weren't sure about that. Why? So isn't it all marketing at the end of the day, though?
Most of it, but here's where it's changing. Stop and Shop is a leader in this. So Stop and Shop is owned by a German retailer and wholesaler called Ahold Delhaize. Well, a lot of times they just shorten it to Delhaize. And Delhaize, by way of Stop and Shop and Giant and a few other banners all in the eastern United States, going all the way down to I think Virginia, maybe a little bit further south, are really doing some innovative things in actually vertically integrating and manufacturing their own private labels. So this is not a case, because I think what you're getting at with your question is, well, isn't it the case that private label ketchup is probably just Heinz with a different label, right? Which is
where I was going.
Which is often true. That's often the case.
Okay.
But larger retailers that have the pockets for it, the budget for it, are increasingly investing in food manufacturing, meaning they're integrating, meaning they're both a retailer and a manufacturer for some of their products, and they're making their own ice cream and crackers and cookies and sauces and salad dressings that are genuinely unique. You genuinely can't get them anywhere else. And because they've effectively cut out the middleman, they're much cheaper. And we're seeing more and more. You can see it right now. I can almost guarantee you that if you pop into the nearest Stop and Shop, that ice cream was made somewhere in New England by Delhaize, like manufactured by them in-house.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's surprising.
And it might seem especially surprising to you if you shop at a place like Crosby's, which again, I don't know, but there's no way a place like Crosby's is integrating their own private labels. I mean, you need deep pockets to pull this off. Like, Albertsons is playing this game well, Kroger, a few other really big ones, Publix down south in Florida and Georgia, and then up here in New England we have Delhaize, and those are pretty much the ones leading the charge and actually integrating their own unique, high-quality private labels. And I just think it's fascinating because it makes the shopping experience better and more interesting. It creates differentiation. And honestly, it's making food more affordable, which I'm a huge proponent of.
Well, because if it's more affordable, I assume that means that it's more equitable. Like more people have access to a broader variety of foods.
I mean, that is the definition of food access. No, I mean, that's people don't. A lot of people don't put that together, but that is the definition of food access, right? It's not just proximity to food; it's being able to acquire it, being able to afford it, right? And so, like, I'll come back to Walmart for a second. Walmart, their private label is called Great Value, and I mean, it is a great value. It sounds like I am not a pitchman for Walmart, but like their private label brand, Great Value, is very, very affordable. And the thing about Walmart, and we can dig into this if you want, Walmart is a controversial company, right? No one is, they have their share of detractors. And honestly, there are points that one could take up with Walmart where I agree, like Walmart could make steps in the right direction to be more sort of sustainable, more equitable, you name it, right? Yeah. But here's what's undeniably true, and I've done some work on this myself. There are parts in the country, rural areas, the South, the Midwest, where food access is basically determined by whether or not there's a Walmart nearby. Because because the Crosbys you're talking about, I'm assuming you're gonna haven't been there, but you know these independent grocers, they cannot survive in these environments, in these rural environments where
so that's interesting because I feel like, sorry to cut you off.
No, it's fine.
That's the opposite of what the traditional kind of stigma with Walmart is, that they are running the mom and pop type shops out of business.
Yeah.
And you're saying that's not true?
So first of all, that's not really true. I've actually, for anyone who's listening and wants to Google it, I wrote a paper on this in 2022 called The Economic Impact of Walmart Supercenters. It's with a friend of mine, Mike Boland, and we cover that exact topic, which is what's interesting is Walmart coming to town is a direct threat for other big box stores. Yeah. There's a long line of evidence showing that if you are a department store or a traditional grocery store, like a large format, right, you're going to take a hit when Walmart comes to town. It's less true for the mom and pops because the mom and pops sort of have their own thing going on, right? Yep. What mom and pops can achieve something that Walmart will never achieve, which is that personal connection, that curated product list, right? That hometown feel that is still successful all over the country. And Walmart can't touch that, So you might have a Walmart supercenter 5 or 10 miles from here, right? But like, you still got Crosby's, right? And Crosby's is giving you an experience that Walmart's never going to give you. Right. So that's point number one. But then point number two is just there are large swaths of the country where smaller supermarkets just can't afford to exist. The transportation costs are too high, the storage costs are too high, the logistics are just completely out of whack, and there's not enough population density to support the business and justify their existence. Not to mention the fact that these smaller stores are more labor intensive, and labor is a big problem. Walmart, by virtue of their economies of scale and their super streamlined supply chain, can get around a lot of that. So you get into places like, Mississippi and Kentucky and North Dakota. And I mean, there are hundreds of thousands of people who their only option if they want to meet the dietary guidelines for Americans is to go to a Walmart. That's their only option for fresh fruits and vegetables, whole grains, lean proteins. And that's just a fact, And again, we can talk about the dark side of Walmart. I'm happy to go there if you're interested. But like that, in terms of food access, they're a major player in the U.S.
So interesting. Dear listener, hope that you're gaining a lot from this episode. Speaking with Dr. Ricky Volpe, who's a professor of agribusiness at CalPoly. We'll be back after this break.
Stay with us as we continue raising your inner voice with Jay Foss.
Hi folks, this is Gerard Moynihan of Moynihan Lumber. If you're replacing the windows in your home, please see the Anderson 400 series windows on display at any of our 3 locations in North Reading, Beverly, or Plastown, New Hampshire. The Anderson 400 is attractive, durable, energy efficient, and reasonably priced. Remember, Anderson is the most trusted name in windows. See the Anderson 400 at any of our 3 locations. That's North Reading, Beverly, or Plastown, New Hampshire, or at MoynihanLumber.com.
Moynihan Lumber, we measure up.
If you have any issues, topics, or voices that you think would be great to be heard on this show, please reach out, jay.foss@me.com. If you want to add your voice to the conversation, record a voice memo and email it to me, or tune in live Sunday evenings at 7 p.m.
How's your 401k? I'm Luke Noble of Noble Financial Group. As a certified financial planner, I know you can't plan for everything, but we can prepare you for life's twists and turns. We'll make a plan to help your money last through your retirement years. Our team is dedicated to helping you achieve your financial goals. Let us help. Visit noblefinancialgroupllc.com.
Securities and investment advisory services offered through MML Investor Services. Member SIPC. Noble Financial Group is not an affiliate or subsidiary of MML Investor Services.
Making our corner of the world a little brighter, online and on air. Raising Your Inner Voice with Jay Foss.
And welcome back to Raising Your Inner Voice. My guest this evening, Dr. Ricky Volpe, professor of agribusiness at CalPoly, is on the show tonight. And you know what? Let's dive into, you mentioned the dark side of Walmart. Let's go ahead, because we all, right? I mean, we all have shadows in and of ourselves. Let's dive into that.
Sure. So Walmart comes under criticism for a lot of reasons. Some I view as, potentially uninformed or misinformed, and some I think are quite fair. And it comes down to this. What is Walmart's mission? What is their goal, right? Walmart's slogan is save money, live better, right?
Yeah.
That's what it's all about. So Walmart's game is selling customers whatever they want. Literally everything, right?
Yeah,
Everything
yeah.
from car tires to hunting rifles to, granola, everything at the lowest possible price.
Right.
And there's a great book out there that's all about this, and it's called Walmart, The High Cost of Low Prices. And that gets at sort of most of the criticisms of Walmart, which is that what do they have to do to get that food to you as cheaply as possible, right? What, I hate to say this, but what corners are they cutting, right?
Yeah.
And so probably the most salient one, and this feeds into a very, very, very pointed professional passion of mine, is Walmart's sort of relationship with the labor force, right? That's tricky. That's hard to sort of wrap your head around, right? Because Walmart is, I think, still the biggest private employer in the U.S. I think they're up there. I mean, Amazon's up there too, but I think Walmart is still the number one private employer in the U.S. They have something. Someone's going to look it up and correct me, but something like 400,000 employees in the U.S. and something like 1.5 million employees around the world.
Okay.
Ballparking, right? I'm sure that you've come across some of this, over the years, just as a consumer of the news or talking to friends or, whatever.
I do none of either of those things. I don't pay attention to the news, and I don't talk to friends.
Well, I'm jealous. I'm jealous about the first part. I wish I could ignore the news. So Walmart famously, they do not allow unionization. They're a famous union buster.
Yeah.
And regardless of how you feel about unions, what that means is that their employees, and increasingly just employees who are living and working in the cities and towns where Walmart operates, are dealing with lower wages, worse benefits, fewer protections, all that sort of stuff, right? And that's pretty well documented, right?
Yeah.
So Walmart's been around long enough now that some folks have done some really careful, rigorous analyses of their effects on the labor market. And it's not really the prettiest picture. It's typically the idea that, they're a big employer and they actually do create jobs. And in some cases, they do lower the unemployment rate. But these folks, many of them, despite working for Walmart, are actually still on government food assistance benefits, right?
Okay.
And so then that leads into this narrative, which there's a lot of truth to it, which is that Walmart's operation is actually being subsidized by the federal government because Walmart isn't paying their employees enough. They're not paying them a living wage.
Right.
So they're unable to feed themselves and feed their families, and they're relying on government benefits to do so. That's, SNAP and WIC, and a few others that are smaller than that. And then that raises the question of, well, okay, how affordable is Walmart really if we're all paying for it? So because if I personally don't shop at Walmart, not because I don't want to, but I happen to not live near one. But I'm technically paying for groceries at Walmart if I'm subsidizing their employees via what, their food budgets, right?
Yeah.
So that's a big one. In terms of how they treat their employees and what they pay them, and sort of the lifestyle of working for Walmart. And Amazon's a whole other thing because food is still a relatively small portion of what they do, but
they've jumped into that.
Oh, big time. Yeah, big time. And every sort of criticism that you could level towards a Walmart about their labor force is surely true for Amazon, perhaps even more true.
Right.
That's a big one. Another one in terms of Walmart, like what's the dark side of Walmart is sort of what is their ecological footprint, right? And because Walmart has literally transformed the landscape, across, their stores are 200,000 square feet, and then their parking lots are a square mile, right? They're enormous, right? And roads are being expanded to make room for the traffic that's going to go to the stores. They obviously generate enormous amounts of waste, right? They use enormous amounts of energy, and there are a lot of concerns about how they source their goods internationally, right? Because Walmart sources everything they can internationally where commodities are cheaper, labor laws are more lax, right? And so that raises questions about what's their impact on international labor markets, on international, ecological, areas, that sort of stuff. And then that compounds the idea that, and it's very salient now, everything that's going on with tariffs and international trade and all that is, again, how cheap is Walmart really if they are actively pulling away market share and business from American manufacturing and American farmers and American ranchers, right? Because if by far the biggest grocer in the U.S. is sourcing as much as they can internationally, is that great? Is that great for the U.S. economy? That it raises questions, right?
Yeah.
So that's sort of a summary of potentially the dark side of this company. And just to kind of put a bow on this, right? So everyone's aware of how big Walmart is. For every dollar that U.S. consumers spend on groceries, 21 cents is going to Walmart.
Wow, no way.
That's 1/5, right?
Huh.
So they are enormous.
Yeah.
They have annual revenues of pushing $300 billion in food. Number 2 is Kroger. You've heard of Kroger?
I'm not familiar, no.
There's no Kroger banner out here, but Kroger's been in the news a lot because they tried to merge with Albertsons, which would have made them the biggest grocery chain in the U.S.
Okay.
But Kroger's number 2, and they're at something like 90 billion. Don't get me wrong, huge, right? But I mean that's more than I make in a year, right? But they're a third of the size of Walmart, right? Wow. So yeah, I mean you talk about Target, right? Obviously, a lot of people think, hey, Target's huge too, right? Like think about how big their stores are, and they sell food, right? So is Target?
They must be a competitor, close,
and exactly, and so they are a competitor, but are they close? Get this. Walmart sells more food in a given year by January 21st than Target sells in the entire year.
Wow.
So, I mean, it's not even close. I mean, Walmart's just so much bigger, so much more efficient. They cover so much more of the food landscape, everything from fresh to frozen to processed to organic to you name it. So they're a behemoth, right?
Yeah.
And there are open questions about where are they tipping the scales, right?
Yeah.
But I do just want to come back because you brought up food access, right?
Yeah.
And that is unambiguous. Walmart is feeding America. That's where they're at.
There's a lot to process here. I've not thought this much and this intently regarding the food that I'm eating.
So again, right? Most people don't, and that's fine. I like to say I do it so you don't have to. You know what I mean? But
thank you very much.
But it's all. I'm interested in this stuff because, I mean, it's the reason why I was interested in talking to you, because I think it does tie in with sort of the broadest themes of your show. Like, I am interested in what can we do, what can we learn, what can we talk about that works towards this goal of making sure that everybody is fed.
Yeah.
Because I'm not even going to focus on the globe right now. That's too much. It's
right.
Because globally there are crazy issues with weather and politics global geopolitics.
Yeah.
But war. But like the United States has the resources to feed its population many times over, right?
Yeah.
Like, yet 11, 12% of U.S. households are hungry, right? And there are other
So what's
issues.
up with that?
And there are other issues, right? Like, we have an obesity epidemic, right? We have an epidemic with chronic heart disease, right? So even a sizable share of the folks who are getting plenty to eat aren't eating the right stuff, right? And in my own little world, right, I don't have a big micro. I mean, right now I have a big microphone, but like I don't have the biggest microphone. I'm not an influencer, right?
Yeah.
But like
Same here.
But I enjoy talking about these issues just to help people understand how the food system works, how food gets to us, to help you to think more critically about, okay, why do we have these issues, right? Why do we have hungry Americans? Why are so many Americans suffering from health ailments that are related to what they eat? Is it an issue with education? Is it an issue with food access? Is it an issue with prices, right? Is it because kind of maybe counterintuitively calories in the U.S. are too cheap? Right. I mean, because, you know, what's a box? Did Chips Ahoy come in a box or a bag? Anyway, a package of Chips Ahoy, right? That's thousands and thousands of calories for $4, right? Whereas, how much do you need to spend in the perimeter of the supermarket, especially in bulk fruits and vegetables, to hit that same calorie count, right? I'm not saying we should outlaw Chips Ahoy, far from it, right? But those calories are very accessible, right? They're very affordable. They're not consistent with a healthy diet, and those are the ones that we most frequently see marketed. We see them put on promotion. We see them on sale. They're easy to stock up on, right?
You're forgetting the best one, which is that they taste probably a little bit better.
And they taste
addictively better.
And that's
sugar tastes good.
And that's the game. That's the whole game, right? Sugar tastes good, fat tastes good, sodium tastes good, right? It's the old joke, I don't know what gluten is, but whatever it is, it's delicious, you know. So.
For anyone just tuning in, this is Raising Your Inner Voice. We're doing a deep dive regarding the food economy this evening with Dr. Ricky Volpe, who's professor of agribusiness at CalPoly. I'm still blown away at how knowledgeable you are on this given topic. Where did this stem from for you?
So it began with the Walmart issue, right? That we sort of covered from my master's.
Right.
And then sort of it they say, was it Einstein who first said it? It's like sort of like, the mark of like truly understanding a topic is really understanding how much you don't know, right? Okay. And it's like there's no way I'll never know, not even close to everything, right? There's all sorts of issues that I don't know anything about, but the more I learn, the more I want to learn, because there are so many moving pieces in our food system, and so many of them stand to be better understood and optimized and made more efficient, right? And so I just really enjoy thinking about that and thinking about these issues, most of which go on behind supermarket shelves, before they get to the supermarket. I said this during COVID-19 was a very challenging time, right? For most of us, right? I mean, I'm sure you were home. I was home. I couldn't teach. I couldn't do field visits, all of that. But COVID also really helped to, if I needed my professional interest to be reignited, COVID did that for me.
Oh, yeah.
Because COVID made me realize how incredibly resilient our food system is.
Oh, interesting.
Incredibly resilient.
As opposed to broken.
Yeah, exactly. And it's common to hear people say that, right?
Yeah.
It's common to hear, podcasters and writers and political folks to say, oh, our food system is irreparably broken. It's fragmented. It's, and I'm not here. It has problems for sure. There are problems that deserve to be thought about and addressed, right? But it is resilient, right? It's another book. Oh God, I'm gonna get the title wrong. I think it's called Grocery: The Hidden Miracle, and it was an amazing book that I read, I don't know, 10 years ago to just sort of help inform my teaching and all of that. And it just really sort of did a really nerdy, wonky deep dive into literally how does food get to the supermarket, right? Like how does that happen, right? And if we even just even if we just stopped and talked about refrigerated truck transportation, right? Just that piece of it, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of a miracle that it all works. It's kind of incredible, right? Because
I feel that way about life itself.
Yeah, no doubt about it. But like, no doubt about it. But like most food retailers, except for the very, very biggest one, they do not own trucks. They don't employ drivers, right? They don't mess with that because transportation is so highly regulated and there's so much liability involved with it, right? So most of the transportation is handled by independent third parties who are themselves coordinated by logistics providers, right? Like 3PLs, non-capacity 3PL logistics companies that sort of sit behind the curtain and pull the strings and connect truck drivers or trucks, right, with either buyers or sellers or both, right? And I've had the opportunity to, visit sort of like, the hub of where a lot of this, so for example, one of the biggest ones, people don't know their name, but C.H. Robinson, they're based in Monterey, California. And I've actually had the opportunity to see what they call the Navisphere, to like look at it and see the pieces come together. And like, I guarantee you, because it happens the first time anyone sees it, they're like, how does any food ever get to me? Like, this looks impossibly complicated, right?
Yeah.
But the pieces fit together. And because what makes this even more challenging is the fact that food is perishable. Right. So it's not, you can't,
shelf life.
You can't talk about it like t-shirts where you say, well, we missed the truck today, but there'll be another truck tomorrow.
Right.
That doesn't work with blueberries, you know, because even if the blueberries are technically still edible, we all know the difference between a fresh, delicious blueberry and a blueberry that's a couple days old, right? That makes a really, really big difference. And one last thing I'll say on this before I take a breath. Sorry, I just took a breath. All food is perishable, right? Even the most, you think about anything that's, those Chips Ahoy, anything that's shelved Twinkies, right?
Yep.
There's always a date on the package, right? And there's always another order coming from the distributor or the vendor, right? There's always another one on the way. So the retailer has to get that on their shelves as quickly as possible and then sell it as quickly as possible to make room for what's coming next. And it never ends. It never stops. It doesn't stop on Christmas Day. It's 24/7.
Yeah. It's extremely complicated and complex.
Unbelievably so. And in COVID, we had the additional issue of what was going on with the labor force, right? Where anyone who could stay home stayed home, right? And in the fields, right, when we had folks who were working in pack houses, or in slaughterhouses, right, we had COVID outbreaks. We had entire crews that had to stay home for a certain period of time. But you know what? Food insecurity during COVID did not tick up noticeably, which is amazing to me. Right? And don't forget, right? Don't forget that during COVID, we had grocery getting supercharged because everybody had to go to the supermarket, right? And food service effectively shut down, right? So overnight, we had billions of pounds of food that was oriented towards food service that had nowhere to go. And at the same time, we had every supermarket in the country that would have taken anything they could. And you know what? The pieces. It took a week or so, but the pieces clicked.
It all fit.
So and it was. I don't throw the word miracle around lightly, but boy, that was pretty close. That we all stayed fed and we had access to pretty much all the foods that we were used to, even during the deepest, darkest lockdown during COVID.
Yeah. Well, and this makes me think, going back to kind of the food equity side of things, but the system isn't perfect, as you pointed out, right? So how can it get better?
It's a great question. What I am perhaps most concerned about in our food system right now is consolidation. So I mentioned the Kroger-Albertsons merger a few minutes ago, and that may not have been your radar. I don't blame you. I mean, if you well, first of all, I don't even know if Kroger,
my listeners are smarter than me, though, so they're probably aware of it.
No, I don't know if Kroger has a footprint in New England. If so, it's not under the Kroger banner, but that's neither here nor there. Kroger and Albertsons combined for something like 4,500 supermarkets in the U.S., and they tried to merge starting in late 2022, I think, and it was a whole thing, and it was eventually blocked by the Federal Trade Commission, and it fell through. But what was interesting was that really brought this debate and concern to the limelight of, hey, because we had almost like an unholy alliance of, consumer advocacy groups are famously left-leaning and liberal, right?
Okay.
And the farm groups are typically conservative and more right-leaning.
Okay.
And this was an issue where those two groups were on exactly the same page, saying, hey, our food system is getting dangerously concentrated, right? And what I mean by that is trending towards monopoly, right?
Yeah, I gotcha.
And that's dangerous, right? That's problematic because that removes choice. It increases market power, meaning that retailers or food companies are sort of more free to charge sort of whatever they want for groceries. And it disincentivizes innovation, right? And covering as much physical space as possible with your stores. And we can get into specific examples if you want, but a big reason why that merger was blocked was because the court of public opinion was so firmly opposed to it. And that in turn was because people are increasingly aware that all up and down the food supply chain, from seed to food manufacturing to, eggs, right? Increasingly consolidated. And people are worried about that, right? Like people are concerned about what happens if you take away competition, if you take away choice, if you take away those sort of options for customers, where do we end up, right? Because I think everybody understands intuitively that monopolies are worrisome, right? And so that is something that I do a lot of thinking about and I do a lot of research on, is sort of understanding, as an example, right? I've got a couple of pieces that hopefully we'll see the light of day sometime in 2025, looking at the price concentration relationship in grocery, right? So as markets become more concentrated, meaning fewer larger players, what happens to food prices? I am not aware of any study ever that has not found a positive relationship, saying as we get closer to monopoly, food prices go up, right?
Yeah.
And
that seems logical.
It seems logical, right? Yet for basically since the Reagan administration, we've basically had a Federal Trade Commission that has rubber stamped almost every proposed merger in the food system, right? And there's sort of this public-private joint acknowledgement now of, okay, maybe we need to pump the brakes on this a little bit. And I'm all for that, right? I believe in the free market, right? I believe in letting businesses run their companies the way they see fit. But this wave of consolidation and concentration does concern me, right? Because I see it as having the potential to undo some of the progress that we've made in the last several generations in the U.S. in terms of making food equitable, diverse, well-distributed, and affordable.
So you think that would all go by the wayside if it were monopolized?
Yeah, I don't know to what extent it would all go by the wayside, but I worry about losing ground, right? Like when I first sat down here, you were like, well, we can talk about tariffs if you want, right?
Yeah.
That might seem like a different issue, and I guess in some ways it is, right? Yeah. But the current administration is implementing or discussing tariffs on a lot of our major trade partners, right. In Mexico, Canada, the EU, Australia, you name it, Brazil, Colombia, right? And from my unique, nerdy, esoteric perspective as a food economist, this is really worrisome, right? Because here's something interesting that I'll bet a lot of your readers are not aware of.
Listeners.
Damn.
Go on. I shouldn't have corrected you.
No, I shouldn't have said it. They are listeners. We're talking. So in the long run, in the U.S. and in developed nations all around the world, food has become cheaper. And that surprises people because we keep on hearing inflation, food prices are going up. Yeah. And I'm sure we're the same age. Yep. You haven't told your listeners this, but we went to high school together. Yeah. And so I know we're exactly the same age. And I'm sure that you, like me, grew up with grandparents or other relatives who were saying, oh, I remember when bread was a nickel or, milk was a dime. That is true. But if you go to the CPI inflation calculator at the Bureau of Labor Stats, take the price they're giving you. Do I have to? Well, no, absolutely not. Again, these are things I do for you, so you don't have to.
Appreciate that.
You take those prices from the 30s and 40s, and you convert them to $25. Yeah. They were more expensive back then than they are now.
What? You're blowing my mind right now.
I know. And so why is that? Okay.
Food prices
have come down relative to the value of the U.S. dollar and relative to our earnings, relative to our wages in both ways. So because there's two ways to measure it. You can measure it by controlling for the value of the U.S. dollar and cleaning out inflation, or you can measure it as what are we spending on food as a share of our disposable income. And both of them have gone like this since the end of World War II.
Down.
Just down, right? And there are two reasons for that. One, I think everyone will readily understand is technological progress, right? We've gotten a lot better at production, harvesting, storing, manufacturing. But the other one is international trade. So international trade has just effectively shifted the supply curve to the right, okay? So Vidalia onions, right?
Yep.
Do you know what those are?
Yeah.
I grew up here just like you. And I remember being a kid and my dad going crazy every year for Vidalia onion season, which was like 3 weeks in the summer, right? And then we would put them on our hot dogs and hamburgers and all that. Now, I'll bet you can go to Crosby's?
Yeah, sure.
Crosby's or Stop and Shop, probably get Vidalia onions or some other sweet onion pretty much year round, coming from South America, wherever it may be, right? That's the beauty of international trade and leveraging comparative advantages. And what that does is that just increases the food supply for the U.S., and that's Econ 101. That brings the price of food down, right? So tariffs on food imports are going to have one very noticeable effect for U.S. consumers that are this month was the first month we saw it in the CPI numbers. Inflation is ticking back up again. That is because of these tariffs with our trade partners. It's just because we have developed this food system where we're importing all these foods, chocolate, coffee, mangoes, pineapples, cinnamon, you name it, right? That we're all accustomed to. We eat all the time, every day. They're household staples, and we import 90 to 100% of them. That's what we're dealing with now. So tariffs are going to increase food prices and reduce food accessibility via higher prices.
So you mentioned a global aspect of this.
Yeah.
What is the international... with the technology advances as well as international food sourcing, does that make food more accessible for everyone? Or is it just uniquely for the U.S.?
It's not uniquely for the U.S., but it's a function of GDP per capita. So the United States is still the wealthiest nation in the world, right?
Yep.
So we benefit from international trade somewhat disproportionately because of our purchasing power. But we're certainly not the only ones, and it's really about the rate of change in GDP per capita. So like a major global phenomenon that's been going on for about 10 years now, GDP per capita in Southeast Asia is growing at 2 to 3 times the rate of what it is in the United States. Okay? For the most part, that's a good thing. That's people coming out of poverty. That's people becoming educated. That's people building families, right? Building wealth, right? This is a good thing, right? The incidence of disease going down. It's the definition of economic progress, right?
Right.
But with increased purchasing power is increased demand for foods that are not grown in Southeast Asia, right?
Yep.
So if you want to know why beef prices are so high, start there, right? That's it,
really?
right? Because the cattle inventory in the U.S. cannot keep up with the demand from China and Thailand and Singapore and Indonesia. It's impossible, right? So beef prices are one of the few foods that, even accounting for inflation right now, are at a record all-time high, and that's the phenomenon. I'm not here to say that this is necessarily a problem we should stop trading, but I am here to say that that is a textbook example of increased international purchasing power affecting trade patterns and food prices. It can happen, and it's happening right now with meats.
Huh.
Yeah. Everything's interconnected.
Yeah. Well, and that goes to one of the premises of the show, is that life in and of itself is more interconnected than we understand. And I think food is a prime example for that because of how vast the system is, the food system.
Oh, for sure. No, our foods, and it's, when you take into account all the different industries that support our food system, it's so much further reaching than the grocery store, right?
Yeah.
You go to Crosby's and you see the folks stocking the shelves and
I
checking.
feel like this is a huge program plugging Crosby's.
Yeah, is Crosby's a sponsor?
No, they're not a sponsor.
No, but that's what, I don't know, 90% of shoppers see and understand and relate to. They understand that there are workers who put the food on the shelves and check them out and weigh their produce and all of that.
Yeah.
But that is, not even the tip of the iceberg, right?
Yeah.
It's the truck drivers and it's the factory workers and it's the folks involved with insurance and finance and obviously growing the food and manufacturing the food and dealing with pesticides and dealing with preservatives, right? And just and nowadays, right now that everything's in the cloud, right, and there's all these like food is rapidly becoming a very high tech industry. Right? Because we were talking about how food is perishable and food waste is maybe the single biggest avoidable cost that retailers face, right?
Yeah.
So every retailer out there is linking their POS system, their point of sale system, with their inventory management system out back so that they have real-time understanding of how much they have of everything that's updated with every transaction that goes on in the store. You have to do that now if you want to avoid throwing away massive amounts of food,
reduce waste,
right?
Yeah.
But that is in and of itself not an easy thing to do. And there's an entire industry that is built up around that. A lot of it's happening in Silicon Valley, but it's all over the country, right? That is developing the technology so that even, I won't say their name, but small independent retailers, can access this technology and can keep an eye on their inventory. So there's just so much going on. That's
so interesting.
Right. But that's the thing is I know that I have stumbled upon a career. I'm never going to run out of things to learn and think about and to challenge me. You know what I mean?
Are you a lifelong learner anyways?
Well, that's hard to say. I don't have a counterfactual, but I have to imagine that would be the case. When you and I were hanging out in the cafeteria at MC, I thought I was going to be a veterinarian, right? But I guess, even in that field, right, I'd always be learning more about how to care for animals, right?
Yeah.
And how to operate the best practice. So maybe, but I have realized I'm very fortunate to have settled myself into a career where it's part of my job to continue to learn and refine what I know, and then to disseminate that knowledge to diverse audiences.
But isn't that the case for most fields? Like, aren't people continually having to learn and educate themselves on whatever field that they're in?
Oh, well, yeah, sorry. So that's what I meant by that was just my field as an academic, as an academic researcher and as a professor, not necessarily that I happen to do food,
Gotcha.
But that said, even in my own little niche, agribusiness at CalPoly, right?
Yep.
We're a small department. There are a dozen of us full time, right? But I'm somewhat unique in that I teach almost exclusively upper level electives. So I teach these sort of topic classes like food retail management, supply chain management, transportation and logistics, advanced data analytics, where they're always kind of changing, right? There's always new issues to think about. And this is not at all to detract from my colleagues who teach the core classes, because those are foundational. If the students didn't take those classes, they'd be lost in my classes. But in those classes, you're teaching these fundamental underlying concepts that are pretty static. They don't really change over time, right? It's a different ball game because you can't mess around with that stuff, right? You've got to teach that stuff exactly right so students are ready for the next classes. But I'm at the next level educationally, right? Like the stuff that I'm teaching, food retail management, there's a different issue every single time I teach that class. And I enjoy that, right? But it means that I can't rest on my laurels, right? I've got, and
you need to stay on top of it.
But it still happens. I said half an hour ago, there's no way to know everything, right? Students, or colleagues, but in class, students will ask me questions I don't know. They'll ask me about a retailer that I'm not familiar with, or a new law that got in place somewhere in Northern California that I hadn't heard about yet. Kind of stuff happens all the time, and I just have to roll with it and say, that's interesting. I'll learn more about that. We'll talk about it next week,
Are there regional laws regarding food management?
My God.
No.
We need another hour. No, but let me just address that real quick. California.
Yeah.
The state that I live in, the state that I work in, right?
Uh-huh.
California feeds the nation.
Yeah.
Right? It's also the most expensive food in the country. Why is that? Why is it that we're growing and by and large manufacturing so much of the food? I mean, almost everything outside of field crops. You talk about corn, wheat, soybeans. Yeah, that's not what we do in California.
Right.
By and large, right?
Yeah.
But specialty crops, eggs, dairy, beef, right? California, leader in all of these, if not almost exclusively. Right?
Yeah.
Shouldn't the food be cheaper in California if we're growing there? Somehow it's more expensive, right? Now, why is that? California also has far and away the most regulated food supply chain. Far and away, right? Now, again, we need an hour to dig into this, right? I'm not here to tell you, I'm not here to sort of like demonize the evils of food regulation. That's what keeps us safe, right? We need our food supply chain to be regulated, right? But the California state legislature applies a lot of regulations to production, harvesting, transportation, storage, manufacturing, retailing, all the labeling, right? That are burdensome for food companies, right? Yeah. And sometimes it's a regulation that gets put into place, and eventually the rest of the nation realizes, oh, we got to do that too, right? Yeah. But a lot of times, honestly, it was kind of a step in the wrong direction, right? That happens all the time, but that's going to take a lot of time and a lot of money to sort of claw back. And that's just the nature of the game in California, right? I'm not here to say that we shouldn't continually think about how to ensure a safe as possible food supply chain, but it's not perfect, right? And I would join the chorus of voices that say it's, to some extent, it's overregulated and overly burdensome for food companies, because the proof is in the pudding that I'm paying more for food than you are, almost certainly, even though when you buy artichokes, they've traveled 3,000 miles to get to you.
Right,
when I buy them,
they've
traveled 50 miles, right? So, but that's the situation we find ourselves in.
Yeah. Wow. Intriguing. Dear listener, I hope that you're gaining a lot from this episode of Raising Your Inner Voice. My guest, Dr. Ricky Volpe, is professor of agribusiness at CalPoly. And we'll be back with more on food economics right after this break.
Want to connect with Jay? Dial in as we continue Raising Your Inner Voice.
Are you worried about the stock market, your 401k, or rising costs? Hi, I'm Luke Noble of Noble Financial Group. As a certified financial planner, I know you can't plan for everything, but our dedicated team of professionals can better prepare you so your money lasts as long as you do. Let us help. Visit NobleFinancialGroupLLC.com.
Securities and investment advisory services offered through MML Investor Services. Member SIPC. Noble Financial Group is not an affiliate or subsidiary of MML Investor Services.
Hi, folks. Paul from Chantilly Brewing. Have you been to our tap room in Beverly, Massachusetts yet? No? What? Oh, come on. All of our beer is gluten reduced, and we make our own hard seltzer cocktails and shandies. And we are dog and family friendly. Always. Our tap room is more than just beer. Pack up the kids and the dogs and come to 59 Park Street and see it for yourself. Or leave them at home. You'll be back. For upcoming events, hours, and to see our current beer list, visit GentiliBrewing.com. That's GENTILE Brewing.com to plan your visit.
What does living a better life mean? And what's your process in figuring that out? If you want to join in the conversation live, tune in Sunday evenings at 7 p.m. Eastern. If you want to gather your thoughts first, record a voice memo and email it to jay.foss@me.com, because I would love to have your voice in this conversation. If you think someone else might need a conversation like this one, then let them know to get involved.
Hi, folks. This is Gerard Moynihan of Moynihan Lumber. Professional builders choose Andersen Windows because they are the #1 trusted and recommended window and door brand in the United States. Andersen Windows and patio doors offer beautiful natural wood interiors, low maintenance exteriors, and outstanding energy efficiency. See the complete line of Andersen Windows on display at Moynihan Lumber in Beverly, North Reading, and Plastown, New Hampshire, or visit us at MoynihanLumber.com.
Moynihan Lumber, we measure up.
Not just another talk show. It's time to be heard. Online and on air. Raising Your Inner Voice with Jay Foss.
And welcome back to Raising Your Inner Voice. We'd love to have some comments on this show, delving into the food economics of really what we're all dealing with in regards to what we do to keep ourselves alive, which is eat. My guest today is Dr. Ricky Volpe, professor of agribusiness from Cal Poly. Ricky, thanks so much for being here.
It's been great.
I have a question for you. So we've been talking most recently about regulations, and I'm a big picture person, so I think of this in regards to a lot of the laws that we have, and whether they're local or federal doesn't really matter, but don't we have laws to kind of help us? And therefore, aren't regulations in that same vein? Aren't they there to help the system?
Well, for sure. Yeah, for sure. So regulations, I spend a lot of time speaking with, learning from, visiting folks in the food industry, mostly retailers, but all up and down the food supply chain, taking students to produce conferences and all of that. And especially in California, regulation, is bordering on kind of a dirty word, in the industry, right? And so, but what I always tell folks, what I tell general listeners and what I tell my students is that a lot of regulations end up being imperfect. Some regulations affecting the food industry have turned out to be actively harmful, right?
Okay.
But these may exist. I can't claim it's never been done. I have never seen a proposed or implemented regulation that didn't come from a good place. Regulations are effectively always written and proposed and voted upon as this notion of we need to protect a segment, right, of this economic pie, right? It's usually customers, but it could be ecological protection. It could be protecting small businesses. There's a wide range, right? Okay. And in food in particular, it often comes down to what can we do to make absolutely sure that this food is safe, right? So the regulations come from a good place, whether they're coming from Democrats or Republicans or the legislature or the governor or you name it. The issue is that oftentimes regulations are not fully thought out, and they incur sort of like unintended costs or consequences that end up sort of costing the juice isn't worth the squeeze effectively. And that happens a lot in California, if I'm being honest. And then it comes time to reevaluate these regulations and attempt to claw them back. But I just want to stress, right? I've never seen anybody on either side of the aisle in California or elsewhere design a regulation that is simply intended to cause anybody harm, right? That's not the idea.
Right. Would you broaden that to most legislation in general? Do you think?
I want to. I would like to. But there are limits to my own knowledge and understanding.
Of course.
And just as a consumer of the news, sometimes I do hear about proposed or even implemented laws across, way beyond food, you name it, right? That I struggle to understand. These things happen. But within the realm of the regulation affecting the food supply chain, I feel like we're on pretty solid ground saying that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Mm-hmm. Wow. Thanks so much for being a guest. Any last thoughts as we wrap up the show regarding the food economy?
No, I mean, this has been a lot of fun. I would say that I am optimistic about the food supply chain and the food system in the U.S. right now. COVID really opened my eyes to how resilient it is. There's a lot of great stuff going on with, greenhouse production and controlled environment ag and genetically engineered crops that are, resistant to drought and fire. And so there's a lot of great stuff that I'm really excited about. Americans have access to the most nutritious food supply in the world, and it's by and large the most affordable. That's all good stuff. There are some concerns that we should be aware about and we should be thinking about. There are steps that average consumers can take, I think, to improve sort of the food system on the margins.
Oh.
And
like what? just throw out one or two.
Currently, in the current environment, I am a proponent of buying local whenever possible, right?
Yeah.
Local ag is not a panacea. It doesn't solve all problems, right? But especially in this current environment where we're increasingly concerned about consolidation and tariffs on our trading partners, buying local gets around a lot of that. And local ag, again, we could talk about pros and cons, but here's one thing local ag does. It builds and supports local economies. It builds jobs. It creates businesses, right? It supports the local tax base. It improves school systems. So if you have the chance to buy local to support, your local independent grocer, it doesn't have to be a farmer's market, right?
Yeah.
Just supporting.
What are your thoughts on growing a garden out back?
Oh, of course. No. Oh my God. No, of course. That's hyper local. The more local, the better. Yeah. No, I'm all for that. And it's healthy and it's fun, and it's a good use of resources. And I guess the last thing I would just say is, anyone who, wants to keep the conversation going. I love interacting with folks. I love answering questions. Shoot me an email, give me a call. It's, I'm a public facing individual and I really enjoy talking about this stuff. So anyone who's out there and has questions or comments, I'd love to hear from you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Dr. Ricky Volpe, guest on Raising Your Inner Voice this evening. And dear listener, we turn it over to you. What are ways that you can be more resilient, not just in your food supply, but in your life? Because I think that you are more resilient perhaps than you may necessarily necessarily already believe that you are. Listening to that inner voice, raising your inner voice, which is what we do each and every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Would love to have you comment. Feel free to share your thoughts on this podcast platform, on the video that you're viewing. Would love to have some interaction with you there. In the meantime, please be kind and gentle with yourself and share that same grace with others.
If you're enjoying this podcast, please help spread the word about raising your inner voice. Join the conversation live. Email jay.foss@me.com to suggest ideas to explore. Also share this podcast with your friends. Let those who need conversations like this have a chance to check it out.
Then let them know to get involved.